revealed how an unexpected cowboy transformed one woman's amazing journey from despair to hope. Sarah sat on the curb of a rundown gas station, her old car sputtering in its final throes. Beneath the sweltering Texas sun, her messy bun sat askew, and the heavy weight of frustration loomed over her like the storm clouds she wished would roll in to break the heat. Every dollar mattered when you were trying to raise 2 kids on tips from a diner and the limited cleaning jobs on the side. They needed school supplies, clothes, even groceries. She rubbed her temples, the memories of her husband flashing through her mind like dangerous shadows, his laughter, his strength. The collision that took him left her not just a widow but lost, drowning in unfulfilled dreams and unmet needs. As she cursed the car softly under her breath, surrendering to despair, a truck pulled up beside her. A rugged figure stepped out, dark hat tilted low over sun-weathered features, kind eyes shining through. Jack was his name, she'd learn. He understood her plight as he approached, gentleness mixed with a wisdom born from pain. They talked, and with each exchange, tension rose within Sarah. She could see Jack had weathered his own storms, raising his younger sister after they lost their parents. In his honesty, she found an unsettling reflection of her own struggles, yet each word he shared fed the internal flame of her buried aspirations. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Days passed, and Sarah found herself drawing strength from Jack's lopsided smile as they shared stories. It was disarming how easily he made her laugh, igniting the spark of her long-dormant dreams. Yet with those dreams came a wave of fear. The presentation looming on the horizon felt like a chasm that might swallow her whole. The old memories of failure, the judgment and scrutiny of her former advisor echoed in her mind. How could she sit amongst the academic elite, the scholars she once longed to be counted among? The very thought made her stomach churn. She ached for the validation she didn't know how to seize. As the day drew closer, the emotional pressure intensified. The night before her presentation, a family crisis erupted, coloring the background of her mind with doubt. Could she really stand there with her spirit worn thin, the clanging judgment of others ringing loud in her ears? What if they laughed her out? That gnawing voice whispered that her worth was tied to her husband's legacy, that without him, she was nothing more than a hollow shell. Desperation clawed at her. But Jack had become a tether, a lighthouse in the fog of her self-doubt, igniting flickers of determination amidst the chaos. With dawn breaking and shadows of uncertainty lingering, she prepared herself, but the panic clutched at her heart with icy fingers. She caught Jack's gaze from the crowd, his unwavering smile somehow stoking a diminishing flame within. Yet, doubt lingered with ferocity, twisting her insides. Was she enough? Suddenly, before she could succumb to the storm inside, she felt as if the very ground was slipping beneath her. Would she rise to the challenge, or would it crumble beneath the weight of her fears? As Sarah stepped onto the stage, the polished floor beneath her felt foreign and unsteady. Her heart raced, a relentless thump echoing her fears. She looked out at the sea of faces, each one scrutinizing her, waiting. The air was thick with expectation, pressing down on her. She stared at the notes clutched in her hands, pages trembling as she fought to steady her breath. The cacophony of self-doubt threatened to drown out the inner voice urging her to speak. She took a moment, allowing the silence to deepen. Jack's kind eyes floated in her mind, reminding her of the nights spent in shared laughter, of vulnerability transforming into connection. Courage surged, liquid fire filling her veins. She took a deep breath, exhaling the weight of uncertainty, allowing the warmth of possibility to seep in. "Thank you all for being here," she began, and to her surprise, her voice was firm. Each word felt like stepping stones guiding her deeper into the purpose that had brought her here. As she shared her story, the struggle of navigating motherhood alone, the pain of loss, and the tiny victories against the backdrop of despair, a kind of quiet strength emerged within her. She talked about dreams of future she had shelved like the brittle pages of an unfinished book. With every word, she dismantled the barriers within herself, confronting the judgment she feared. The ebb and flow of her narrative captured attention, transforming apprehension into empathy. Faces shifted from skepticism to understanding, and she fed off their energy, embracing the connection rather than shying away from it. Sarah felt her pulse synchronize with the rhythm of the room. Suddenly, she wasn't just a widow, she was a storyteller, a voice of resilience forged in the fire of life's adversities. As she rounded off her presentation, a liberating realization washed over her. The scornful echoes of her advisor, the whispers of not enough, were fading. If they had once defined her, they no longer held power. Jack's encouragement replayed in her mind, his belief in her potential fanning the embers of self-worth, igniting a sense of belonging that she had almost forgotten. Applause broke out, enveloping her in a warm embrace she hadn't anticipated. But even amidst cheers, a flicker of doubt lingered. Would they really see her? The moments of silence she dared to fill with her truth had unveiled parts of her heart, but how would she handle the inevitable critic who would dismiss her journey as mere pretense? After the presentation, nerves still fluttering, she wandered outside, away from the crowd. Jack was there waiting, leaning against his truck, pride shining through his weathered features. "You did it, Sarah," he said, his voice deep and full of assurance. "Did I?" she questioned, doubt creeping back in like an unwelcome visitor. He took a step closer, the distance between them shrinking in significance. "You did more than you think. You faced them, faced yourself. That's not just enough, it's monumental." The weight of his words pressed down, pushing back the skepticism that threatened to rise. But still, as the sun set, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink, she couldn't shake the feeling that a greater challenge loomed ahead. She had taken a step, yes, but what came after would test her strength anew. "Do you really think that?" she dared to ask, vulnerability spilling from her lips, revealing the chasm within her that still longed for validation. "Absolutely," Jack replied, "but the real test lies in what you do next." And there it was, a door waiting to be opened. With a heart breathing alight and dread lurking in the corners, she stood on the precipice of something both exhilarating and terrifying. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting shadows of uncertainty, she pondered the path forward. What awaited her beyond this moment would challenge everything she thought she would want. Taking a deep breath, Sarah faced the whispering winds that foretold change. Was she ready to confront the future she had both yearned for and feared? The sun's last rays disappeared, leaving the world in twilight, a metaphor of sorts for the ambiguity Sarah felt inside. She stared into the horizon, a swirl of colors embodied the dreams she still held dear and the chasms of insecurity that haunted her. What would the next chapter of her life look like? Her gaze shifted from the fading light to Jack, standing sentinel beside his truck. His unwavering belief in her was a lighthouse in her stormy sea of mixed emotions. "Where do I go from here?" she asked, focusing on Jack, hoping he could extract clarity from the shadows in her mind. "Start with what you love. What ignites your passion?" Jack's words hung in the air, enigmatic yet effortless. Her love for storytelling surfaced first, accompanied by an uninvited rush of apprehension. Could she find a way to share not just her story, but also elevate others through hers? Self-doubt clawed at her, whispering accusations of naivety and overreach. But as she forced herself to consider this, she realized that storytelling went beyond mere words. It was an invitation to forge connections, and right now, she felt a deep yearning, a compelling need to orchestrate something beautiful from her pain. With this realization, Sarah felt a newfound determination. Maybe I start a blog," she murmured, the words gaining momentum as she spoke. "A space where I can share not only my story but also the stories of other women facing their struggles." Jack's smile widened, an indication that he understood not only her aspirations but also the weight they carried. "That sounds like a path worth exploring. You've got the voice, Sarah. Why not share it with the world?" But the nagging fear crackled like static behind her renewed courage. What if it fell flat? What if no one connected, and her raw vulnerability became fodder for critique? She took a step back and inhaled deeply, grounding herself in the moment. Clenching her fists, Sarah felt the heat of determination bubbling within. What if I can create a community? A bridge for women like me lost, seeking solace through shared experiences? It could be an archive of truths and healing. The idea ignited a spark, and Sarah envisioned a network where the bonds of shared stories formed a resilience woven into fabric stronger than any individual thread. Familiar yet exhilarating, the notion enveloped her. "What are the necessary steps to begin?" she asked, the words flowing with newfound urgency. "Start small, write what comes to you," Jack encouraged. "Find your voice. Post regularly, see what resonates, and evolve from there. It's your journey, and any steps forward are progress." She nodded, feeling the mechanical whir of inspiration and action in her mind. Decisive steps lay ahead, yet the feeling of impending criticism lurked like a storm cloud on the horizon. Would she be able to withstand the scrutiny? What if her efforts fell short? The fear brewed, but she was aware of a growing resilience, a determination not to allow doubt to dictate her future. Determined, she began crafting an outline for her first entry, each bullet point lifting the weight of uncertainty. Words flowed like a torrent through her mind, demanding release onto the blank page. But the moment of elation was shattered as a reminder of the past seeped back in. The voices of her advisor echoed, drowning out the brilliance she sought to embrace. "Will you always be defined by your past failures?" She questioned herself, battling the internal dialogue spiraling toward defeat. She gazed toward Jack, searching for reassurance, who simply answered, "You define you, Sarah. All of this your story, your journey, the path forward, it's in your hands. Embrace what you've learned. Step into your truth." Challenged by Jack's unwavering perspective, she finally resolved that she would not wallow in fear. Instead, she would craft her narrative, channeling not just her struggles, but also her strength. As she bravely ventured into the unknown. As she turned back to her phone, fingers poised over the keyboard, waves of possibility crashed over her, intermingled with the fears still lurking beneath the surface. What might her first blog entry reveal, not just to others but to herself? Could the risks pay off in a new kind of discovery? And as the first word appeared on the screen, a tentative yet powerful hello, an unmistakable truth emerged. The window was slowly opening to a future she could shape. Yet, deep down, she sensed another challenge waiting, perhaps a confrontation that would test the very foundation of her newfound identity. Sarah paused, hesitant yet electrified by the chance to explore her voice. What hidden complexities lay ahead, ready to either bolster or shatter her burgeoning confidence? The realization was thrilling and terrifying, and she couldn't help but wonder what awaited her just beyond that open door. Sarah inhaled deeply, feeling both exhilarated and terrified as she contemplated the blank screen before her. The cursor blinked, like a heartbeat, reminding her that the journey she envisioned wasn't just about the words she would write, it was about revealing herself, layer by layer. She pressed her fingers against the keys, the heat of her anxieties flaring with every thought. Each word she typed felt like a metaphorical flame flickering, as if she were sparking a light against her doubts. She began describing a pivotal moment in her life, the moment that flooded her with a blend of vulnerability and courage. But as she recounted her story, the shadows of her past loomed larger, bubbling up threats of inadequacy. "What if they don't see me?" she whispered to herself, pausing to assess the self-criticism creeping in again. The irony of her endeavor wasn't lost on her. Here she was about to share her truth, yet struggling to accept her own voice. She shifted in her chair, mentally reminding herself that honesty is often the bedrock of connection. "Just right," she muttered, her resolve hardening. She pressed onwards, letting her initial fears morph into a compelling narrative that illustrated not just her pain but her journey towards reclamation. The words came easier now. Regaining her narrative meant reclaiming her power. As she finished those first few paragraphs, a hint of a smile broke through the weight of her anxiety. But with that spark of accomplishment came another wave of doubt. What if this isn't enough? What if I fail to resonate? The cacophony of fear rose within her again, like an unexpected storm gusting wind through the solid foundation she'd only just begun to forge. It was at that moment a text pinged on her phone. A message from Jack. "How is it going with the blog?" She hesitated before replying, unsure how to articulate her evolving emotions. But the moment she read his inquiry, she felt a flicker of warmth pierce through her lingering insecurities. Jack's faith in her simmered as an encouraging reminder that she wasn't alone on this journey. She texted back, "It's a start. Tackling my story is harder than I thought. Just remember, it's a reflection of your growth." "It's not about perfection," he replied, his words cued a mental shift. No more would she suppress the notion of failure. Every step forward was a piece of the mosaic she was constructing. She returned her focus to the screen and continued weaving together her thoughts, casting her vulnerabilities into a narrative that could potentially echo in another's life. Each keystroke pulsated with a sense of healing, but as she wrote, she felt the weight of expectations shift. What if this wasn't just about her anymore? For every woman who might read her words, there was a chance to make an impact, a ripple effect that could penetrate the silence surrounding their struggles. Suddenly, her fears twisted into a flame of purpose that propelled her forward. With each passing hour, her initial hesitation transformed into a burning desire to shape the blog into a platform that could serve others. She envisioned a community where fractured hearts could find solace and solidarity through shared experiences. Yet, the shadows of her self-judgment remained, reminding her that forging this connection meant risking exposure. Unbeknownst to her, the very act of exploring her vulnerabilities would lead her to moments of confrontation, both with herself and perhaps with others in her life who were less understanding of her journey. She glided her fingers across the keyboard, the passion swelling within her. It was a delicate balance between fearing judgment and finding her authentic self. Would she truly be able to embrace all aspects of her past, or would she falter at the crossroads of vulnerability and strength? And just as she began her next paragraph, a flicker of an incoming call interrupted her thoughts. A name appeared on her screen, one she hadn't seen in years, the very advisor who had planted the seeds of doubt in her mind. With a heart drumming against her ribs, Sarah hesitated before answering, uncertainty flooding her system. "Hello?" She spoke, her voice steadier than she felt. The moment had arrived, ushering in the potential for profound confrontation. Would this be a path to validation or another hurdle in her resurgence? As the conversation began, she braced herself, understanding that each voice carries the potential to build or fracture the new story she sought to create. "Sarah, is that you?" The voice on the other end was familiar yet filled with an edge that sent a shiver down her spine. It belonged to Kevin, her former advisor, whose expectations had once loomed over her like a storm cloud. "Yeah, it's me," she replied cautiously, trying to mask her apprehension with a hint of confidence. "I saw some of your posts on social media. Looks like you're diving into writing," he said, his tone more inquisitive than congratulatory. "Yeah, I'm starting a blog," she said, striving to sound casual, but her heart raced in rhythm with her thoughts. Was this an opportunity to reclaim her narrative, or would it just open old wounds? "Interesting. I remember when you first started studying. You always had," he paused for effect, "potential. But, are you sure you want to share so much? I mean, weaving in personal stuff can be risky." The implication lingered in the air, hanging heavy like a judgment she had dreaded for years. Sarah swallowed hard, grasping the phone tightly as if it anchored her against his skepticism. "I've been thinking about it a lot. Sharing my journey is part of embracing who I am now," she countered, her voice steadier than she felt. "Embracing who you are? Isn't that a bit self-indulgent?" He shot back, dismissing her renewal as something trivial. For a brief moment, Sarah faltered, shadows of doubt creeping in once more. Yet, she sensed the embers of resolve kindling within her. "It's more than that. It's about connection, Kevin. People need honest stories." There was a brief silence, as if he were digesting her response. "Stories are powerful," he finally acknowledged, but the tone still dripped with condescension. "Just be careful not to overshare. You don't want to regret it." His cautious warnings triggered a rebellion inside her. She had spent years doubting herself because of comments like his. Who was he to dictate the boundaries of her authenticity? "I appreciate your concern, but my story is mine to tell." The conversation shifted. Kevin steered it back toward safer topics: the industry, forthcoming projects, and his ongoing success. Yet, with every assumption and anecdote he offered, she felt more compelled to reclaim her narrative. As she listened, she reflected on the walls Kevin represented in her mind. They had shielded her from unworthy perceptions, but they had also inhibited her growth. What if confronting him, even indirectly, could catalyze her evolution? A prophetic metaphor flickered. What if his doubt had merely marked a line she now had the courage to cross? When the call finally ended, a mix of emotions swirled within her. She felt the weight of his opinion still, but she also sensed a burgeoning strength within her, one that bespoke the transformation of her fears into a determination to push beyond the limitations others placed on her. Sarah returned to her laptop, fingers poised like warriors ready for battle. The cursor pulsed, and rather than succumbing to exhaustion, she thrived in the energy of confrontation. If she could challenge Kevin's perceptions, surely she could craft a narrative that not only embraced her past but illuminated her future. Settling into her chair, she found herself at the crossroads once again. Vulnerability intertwined with strength, each decision bore the potential for revelation. She decided to write about confrontation and discovery, how the burdens of the past only intensified her yearning for authenticity. The words flowed, more expressive than before, laced with newfound conviction. Just as she tapped the final letters of her latest paragraph, her phone dinged again. Another message from Jack, this time reading, "I'm really proud of you." A sense of warmth cascaded through her. It was validation carried on the wings of belief. But with the joy came the ache of uncertainty. Did this mean she was ready for the vulnerability that lay ahead? As she poised to continue, a sudden thought gripped her. What other demons awaited her? Who else from her past might resurface, challenging her journey? With a breath, Sarah sat back, her resolve solidifying as determination crystallized in her chest. She was ready for more than just writing. She was ready for the next confrontation that could either build her up or tear her down. The storm clouds of doubt still hinted at their presence, but she felt equipped to face them. The moment of truth was approaching, and Sarah knew the path ahead could either break her down or reveal the strength buried deep within. Would she embrace the storm, or would fear hold her captive once again? The moment after the call with Kevin hung in the air like a tangible weight, tugging at the edges of her resolve. Sarah stared at her laptop. A blank page waited patiently to be filled with the words that could both illuminate her past and project her future. She remembered his words, laced with doubt, and felt the familiar sting of his skepticism creep back in. Yet, there was a flicker of rebellious energy. She had always been the student trying to win the approval of her instructors, yet here it was total liberation fizzing beneath her skin. What if this was the moment where she stopped seeking validation and instead sought clarity of self? Taking a deep breath, she opened a new document and titled it "Unpacking the Layers." In her mind, the phrase resonated. Each layer was a part of her story, waiting to be uncovered. She began to type, a key unlocking secrets she had kept tucked away, childhood fears, the pressure of expectations, the many times she felt unheard or overlooked. As Sarah poured out her thoughts, she sensed the metamorphosis taking place. It was more than writing, it was a reclamation of her narrative. She examined the moments that had shaped her, those around her who had said she wasn't good enough, and then countered them with her newfound perspective. She realized then that every painful experience was merely a stepping stone fueling her growth, yet, there was still a kernel of fear nestled in her gut. What if she exposed her raw self and it wasn't well received? She halted mid-sentence, fingers hovering over the keys. Could the world really handle her unfiltered truth? It was a moral dilemma that gnawed at her conscience, but it was quickly tempered by the realization that she owed it to herself to be heard. Among the cacophony of insecurities, Jack's message reverberated with warmth. He believed in her. Suddenly, the uncertainty mixed with a burgeoning desire for authenticity compelled her to confront not just the past but those who had shaped it. With renewed vigor, she continued. She recalled high school, where she crafted stories to escape through exaggeration, feeding a sense of worth derived from fabricated victories. The more she delved into her history, the clearer it became that the very act of writing was transformative. Each word started to hold the power of release, shedding chains forged by others' expectations. She was shedding an old skin, but as the words flowed, an unsettling thought lurked. This authenticity might invite judgment from others, especially Kevin. Although he was just a voice from her past, the presence of his doubt loomed like a shadow. The irony was not lost on her. In trying to conquer her fear of vulnerability, she was battling against the very perceptions that had shaped her existence. The ticking clock reminded her time was fleeting. She had a decision to make: let the ghosts of the past control her narrative, or dare to redefine it on her terms. Self-doubt whispered insistently, yet determination screamed louder. Deciding to confront the shadow of Kevin head-on, Sarah began to draft a letter, one she might never send, but that would liberate her voice. She focused on articulating not only her journey but her gratitude for the lessons, painful as they might have been. It was a cathartic exercise, transforming resentment into empowerment. Just as she typed the closing line, her phone buzzed again, this time with an unknown number. Curiosity piqued, she hesitated, contemplating whether or not to answer. A surge of adrenaline surged through her veins. Was it another specter from her past, another voice echoing doubt? As she pressed accept, Sarah sat back, a wicked smile curving her lips. This was it. No more running from the past, it was finally time to embrace it and see where the journey might lead. Hello? She answered, her heart racing with excitement and anxiety. The voice on the other end was unexpected, and it could change everything. Sarah? The voice crackled through the speaker, filled with a mix of familiarity and uncertainty. It was a voice she hadn't expected to hear again, a voice that could unlock memories she had fought hard to reshape. Who is this? She replied, her pulse quickening as a mix of anxiety and trepidation surged through her. It's Dave, he said tentatively. From college. I saw your recent work online, and I thought I should reach out. The name hit her like a stone, rippling through the fabric of her past. Dave had always been one of the few who rallied behind her during the tumultuous years of her youth, yet hearing from him now pulled the veil back on shrouded emotions. Hi, Dave. It's been a while, she managed, framing her response carefully, bracing herself for the onslaught of nostalgia. Yeah, it has. I've been following your journey a bit, he continued. I heard you're writing again. I remember how passionate you were back then. His tone was inviting, but uncertainty nestled in Sarah's chest. The mere thought of her past work filled with imitative contours and the echo of lackluster creativity dredged up a wave of self-doubt. Thanks. It feels good to finally take the leap and be true, you know? She offered cautiously, navigating her own maze of apprehension. There was something burdensome in that sound of nostalgia that sparked both excitement and trepidation within her. I get it. Authenticity is a tall order. But, hey, I was about to ask if you'd like to catch up over coffee, he suggested, the casualness of it both enticing and intimidating. The prospect of rekindling a connection frightened her, but it was also alluring. Could she really meet someone from her history where judgment had always felt like a constant presence? This could be a chance to reinforce her stance, to show not just how far she'd come, but where she was headed. Sure, she replied, finding courage in the notion that this encounter would be part of her reclamation. That could be good. As they tentatively finalized plans, Sarah felt a surge of anticipation coursing through her veins. This meeting would serve not just as a reunion but as a test. Could she remain resolute in her newfound authenticity in the presence of someone who had once influenced her insecurities? In the days leading up to it, her thoughts oscillated wildly. She practiced affirmations like mantras. She would embrace this opportunity to showcase her growth, rip away the residual insecurities that clung like burrs. Each morning, she would write a list of who she was now, rather than who she had been. The growth, the evolution, and the strength found in vulnerability. On the day of their meeting, she felt a conflicted cloud of nerves intertwined with excitement. Her reflections on the road leading up to this moment framed a reality where judgment should not hold power over her narrative. Instead, she envisioned the potential for connection, of asking for support from friends, of sharing dreams and clarities, and of confronting the shadows of the past head-on, illuminated by her current revelations. As she entered the cozy cafe, her heart thudded rhythmically in her chest. Spotting Dave at a table waiting, his familiar smile settled her nervously fluttering heart. With each step toward him, a deep-seated fear entwined with determination propelled her forward. Hey, it's great to see you, he said, gesturing to the chair across from him with genuine warmth. Likewise, she replied, sitting down to face not just him but her own reflections, her fears, and her fully realized self. It was a chapter of exploration, a plunge into authenticity that was long overdue. As they exchanged pleasantries and laughter, Sarah wondered, what would this encounter reveal about the person she had become? And would it redefine her path even further? A deeper question nagged at her. Would she ever truly feel liberated from the voices of her past, or was this just the beginning of wrestling with them again? As they settled into conversation, she realized that the past might not be the storm on the horizon. It could become a lighthouse guiding her way. Would she find direction, or would the waves crash again, breaking the fragile pattern she had worked so hard to weave? They settled into a rhythm, their conversation punctuated by laughter and thoughtful silences. Dave's presence, initially looming with nostalgia, morphed into a reassuring comfort. Sarah found the ease of their connection surprising. She remembered how they used to share dreams and aspirations, how each word once poured from her without hesitation. "Your work is really impressive," he said, leaning forward, sincerity dancing in his eyes. "You've really come into your own. It's inspiring." The compliment sliced through the self-doubt that had plagued her. "Thank you," she replied, her voice firmer than it had felt all day. Here was someone who saw her, not through the lens of a past riddled with insecurities, but through the clarity of her present. The lightness in her chest pushed the shadows further back. As the conversation flowed, she could feel the silencing of those nagging inner voices, the echoes of criticism that haunted her every creative decision. But lurking just beneath the surface was a nagging thought: was this confidence sustainable? Was it simply an act for the sake of appearing strong? Dave's expression shifted, as if reading her mind. "You've been through a lot, haven't you?" he ventured gently. "Do you feel like you've put it all behind you?" That question unsettled her. She thought of the late nights filled with doubt, the vulnerability exposed on the page that elicited both pride and panic. "I'm working on it," she admitted, "but some days feel easier than others." He nodded, processing her words. "It's a journey. And it's okay not to be perfect. Authenticity isn't about having it all figured out, it's about being honest with yourself. I think that's what I notice most in your work. Honesty." The word hung heavy between them, resonating in the marrow of her being. Was she truly being honest, not only in her work but in her personal life? As she stared into her coffee, swirling the dark liquid, she wrestled once more with a chilling thought: what if her pursuit of authenticity was just another mask to wear? "Have you ever thought about why you write?" Dave probed further, his interest genuine. "What's your real motivation behind it all?" That question grounded her in the present, pulling her from her racing thoughts. Her hands shook slightly as she pushed them flat against the table, a safe anchor. "I think I write to explore what I feel, what I've lived through," she reflected slowly. "It's a way to reclaim my story. I used to let others shape my narrative, but now I want to shape it myself, unapologetically." Dave smiled, a signal of understanding. "That's powerful. You're carving out not just a voice but a legacy." With those words, the realization struck her. Writing wasn't merely an act for her, it was an extension of her psyche, a form of self-therapy that she could control. Rising excitement bubbled within her. Writing her truth might help her maintain steadiness against the lurking doubts, might help her reconnect with the core of who she was, but just then, a fleeting glimpse of her past surfaced, a memory of the college workshop where intimidation had stalked her at every turn. She recalled the awkward critiques from peers, the fear of judgment that had stymied her growth. "But what if I falter again?" she whispered before she could stop herself. Her silence swallowed them temporarily as they gauged the heaviness in the air. "Sometimes, faltering is part of the climb," he reassured her. "But you can't give in to fear. Use it. Let it propel you. Write without hesitance, even if it's just for yourself." His words settled like seeds within her soul. Perhaps she had spent too long tiptoeing around her fears, letting them dictate her creativity. The thought ignited a surge of resolve. As they wrapped up their meeting, she felt lighter. Dave had unknowingly illuminated paths she hadn't dared to explore, rekindled ambitions buried beneath layers of apprehension. Their conversation had ignited a question: was the true test of her authenticity not sharing her art with the world, but daring to express herself, bravely and completely? Walking back, the air clean and invigorating, she scrutinized her surroundings. Each step radiated purpose. But lurking in the corners of her mind was uncertainty about what would happen when she took the plunge. As she reached her apartment, she couldn't shake the anticipation spiraling within. What if she tapped into the feelings she had avoided? What if revealing her innermost thoughts unveiled not only her strength but also deeper scars? Was she prepared for the emotional tide of truly opening up her narrative? Would the revelation bring clarity, or would it drag to the surface storms she feared facing? The answer lay within her, beckoning and daunting all at once. The moment of truth was upon her, she felt it surge like a wave. Would she dare to write it? The following morning, sunlight streamed through her window, casting a warm glow across her cluttered desk. Sarah stirred awake, her mind buzzing with the remnants of her conversation with Dave. The call to authenticity echoed throughout her thoughts like a rallying cry, instilling courage but also dread. She had made a pledge to rediscover her voice, yet the stakes felt high, and uncertainty clung to her like an unshakable shadow. Fighting a wave of anxiety, Sarah threw off the comforter and swung her legs over the side of the bed. Today wasn't just another Saturday, it was the day she would begin crafting her narrative, untangling the complexities that had knotted her creativity for too long. She needed a plan, something tangible to ground her grand aspirations. With determination firmly pacing through her veins, she pulled out her laptop and opened a blank document. A familiar emptiness stared back at her, tauntingly devoid of words. She hesitated, fingers hovering over the keyboard as the fear of judgment seeped in. What if the stories she wove didn't resonate? What if they only revealed the broken pieces she tried so hard to conceal? No, she reminded herself. Today, she would ignore those fears and write with intent. Draw upon the raw edges of her experiences. Venturing into that space would not be simple, but stifling herself any longer felt unbearable. The choice was clear: either embrace discomfort or let it bury her under a weight of silence. Taking a deep breath, she typed. The words started to flow in fragmented bursts, fragments of memories, reflections on her insecurities, moments she felt alive despite her struggles. At first, she hovered near the surface, but with each stroke, she dared to dive deeper, inching closer to the emotional center she had hidden for so long. With 10 minutes gone, she felt the exhilaration mix with anxiety, shaping an urgency that compelled her to express herself fully. Yet, in the midst of this emerging clarity lay a nagging question: would the truth she unearthed be too difficult to carry, emotionally or creatively? Tread carefully, she told herself. As midday approached, a revelatory thought pierced her concentration. Writing might help her understand not only herself but also the turbulent emotions surrounding her past. If she dared to explore the darker moments, examining their shadows, perhaps she could finally reclaim power over her story. The possibility invigorated her. She paused, recalling a particularly poignant memory: the day the rejection letter had arrived, shattering her confidence. That single moment had forced her to internalize her worth through the lens of others' opinions. A wave of anger surged through her at the memory of feeling diminished. She had given away her power and allowed herself to be defined by failure. Clenching her jaw, Sarah understood this was exactly why she needed to write. It wasn't just a creative endeavor, it was a reclamation of her narrative, a way of confronting her demons. The thought solidified her intention. As she pressed forward, her heart raced in time with her words, each one a step toward understanding and strengthening herself. But then, a familiar tension gripped her, a haunting sense of vulnerability. Would exposing her soul strengthen her or lay her bare to ridicule? The fear loomed large, threatening to smother the flicker of courage she had reignited. Her fingers faltered above the keys, the internal war raging. To share her voice was to share her wounds. Would the world accept it, or would it turn away? The call to authenticity clashed violently with her ingrained fear of judgment, and uncertainty wrapped around her like a noose. Suddenly, the faint buzz of her phone snapped her from her turmoil. She picked it up, eyeing the screen. It was a message from Dave, checking in. "How is the writing coming along?" In that instant, clarity struck again. This was a moment of personal growth, a threshold she had crossed. Instead of running back into her comfort zone, she seized a pen and paper. Those doubts needed a tangible expression. She would write him back, embrace the moment, and invite accountability into her journey. As she crafted her reply, an invigorating sense of control washed over her. No more hiding behind silence. A new chapter awaited her, and she stood at the brink of transformation. What new depths of her story would emerge with each word penned on the page? Would confronting these truths unlock doors previously thought sealed? Excitement mingled with trepidation as she imagined where this journey could lead her next. Today she had taken the first step, but what awaited her on the other side of authenticity? Would she finally find freedom in the process, or would she stumble into the unexpected? The days that followed Sarah's heartfelt conversation with Dave solidified her transformation in ways she never anticipated. Each morning felt like a new beginning as she dedicated herself to writing with a genuine focus. She crafted narratives woven from her past, leveraging the tumultuous experiences to shape her future. It wasn't just about recounting events, she was reclaiming her voice, amplifying her story to resonate with others navigating similar challenges. In those moments spent typing at her desk, doubts occasionally crept back in. But each time, she embraced them, viewing her fears as invitations to dig deeper rather than as hurdles to her progress. Writing became her sanctuary, a medium through which vulnerability turned into strength. With every paragraph, every reflection shared with her readers, she cultivated a sense of belonging while further establishing her identity. Then came the email, a request for a feature on her blog from a respected online platform dedicated to storytelling and personal growth. They had stumbled upon her posts and were captivated by her voice. The opportunity sent shockwaves of excitement coursing through her being, validation from a wider audience she hadn't deemed possible. It was monumental not just for her growing readership but as recognition of her journey from widowhood, despair, and hidden talents to forging a public narrative brimming with authenticity. "Sarah, you need to see this!" Jack exclaimed, beaming with pride as he held his phone across the table during dinner at her favorite diner. His eyes sparkled with laughter and joy, and she felt a warmth bloom in her chest. As she read through the features they hoped to highlight, tears clouded her vision. There it was, her story unfolding before her eyes, crafted not for the accolades but to resonate, inspire, and connect. This was no longer just her recovery, it had evolved into a mission of empowerment for herself and countless others. That night, as the weight of her achievement lingered, she reflected on how far she had come. In the past year, she had moved from a place of paralyzing self-doubt to stepping boldly into the spotlight with her narratives. She was no longer haunted by the ghosts of her past, they had become her allies in crafting a rich tapestry of storytelling that blended truth with understanding. The call for her story echoed in her heart, urging her to push beyond her new success. With this feature, she envisioned more than just singular stories. She visualized communities forming through shared experiences, bridging gaps between women who felt lost as she once had. Months passed, and the feature went live. The response was overwhelming. Encouraging comments flooded in, women reached out to share their stories, and Sarah found herself at the heart of something vibrant and meaningful. With the realization that her voice had impact, she solidified her new mission to create a platform for women to share their journeys, share their struggles, and find their light. A year later, with her blog thriving, Sarah stood in front of a crowd at a local women's conference that had invited her as a guest speaker. She felt an electric pulse of anticipation as she took the stage, surrounded by women who sought to connect through the threads of their narratives. Strong and confident, she was not just a widow or a mother, she was a fighter, a beacon for others who were reclaiming their stories alongside her. As she spoke, laughter blended with silence. Each word she shared felt like a healing balm, each story a thread stitching together their collective experiences. And in those moments, the doubt that once threatened to drown her became a faded whisper, not an absence, but an acknowledgement of the journey that had brought her here. With a smile, Sarah concluded her talk, basking in the applause, a tangible survey of her hard-earned recognition. The deep satisfaction settling over her was palpable. She had not only achieved personal victory but had transformed her pain into purpose. The shadows of her past were still there, but they no longer held power over her narrative. Instead, they fueled her drive to inspire others. With every keystroke and every speaking engagement, she demonstrated that resilience wasn't merely a concept to embrace, it was the very foundation of her authenticity, a truth she had carved with every challenge she'd faced on her journey. Today, she reminded her audience, embracing our vulnerabilities allows us to expand our authenticity. The interruption of their enthusiastic cheers echoed the sentiments of her heart. Sarah stepped off the stage, confident and fulfilled, a woman who had conquered her doubts, lifted others alongside her, and paved the way for even greater stories to emerge. This was her achievement. This was her voice, a testament to growth acquired and the empowering legacy she now embodied. Now, it's your turn to embody the spirit of this growth. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories that will ignite your journey. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and show your support for these inspiring narratives. Comment your reactions and theories about this story's conclusion. Your voice matters. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion and spark their own transformation. Don't wait even one more second to join the movement of personal overcoming.